Hey guys, it's Logan from Coaster Kids, and today I'm going to tell you my top 10 favorite hypers. And I love hyper coasters. They're one of my favorite kinds of coasters ever. And it was really hard to narrow it down to just 10 because there were several other good ones that didn't make this list, like Titan, Steel Force, and Apollo's Chariot. And I'm sorry to all you Apollo's Chariot fanboys, but Apollo's Chariot is not an elite hyper. So anyways, let's get right into the video. Number 10 is Behemoth at Canada's Wonderland. And when I first rode this almost 3 years ago, it was really rattly and shaky for some reason, but it was still fun. Although it does have the basic out and back layout, has the drop, goes through some airtime hills, then has the turnaround, then goes through some more airtime hills, then the helix, then the ride's over. But it was just still really fun to ride with my family. Number 9 is Mamba at Worlds of Fun. And it was my first Morgan coaster, so I thought it was going to be pretty rough. But I thought it was very smooth. It was super fun. The airtime on this was probably better than most of the hyper coasters I rode. And it was fairly intense too. It had some really cool elements. And the last few airtime humps before the end, I thought were the best parts of the ride. Number 8 is Diamondback at Kings Island. And I've ridden this several hundred times now, and it still has never gotten old. The airtime, really good. The splashdown, amazing. And I really love how it goes out into the woods, like away from Kings Island. It just feels really cool when you ride it. And if you watch some of my videos, whenever I leave the station, I always go, tss. And feel free to do that. It's like a Diamondback tradition. Number 7 is Goliath at Six Flags Over Georgia. And I don't really know why, but this is a pretty intense coaster. Even though it has a basic B&M hyper layout, it's really intense in my opinion. It's just really fast, really smooth, and it's exactly 200 feet tall, so it's barely a hyper. And even though it's by the parking lot, like many of coasters, it's just fun to ride. Number 6 is Nitro at Six Flags Great Adventure. This is probably the most intense B&M hyper I've ridden. There is a couple twisty sections during the ride which make it a little bit more intense, but then there's also the airtime hills which make it a lot better. And you also do pull a couple G's on this coaster, and that's pretty awesome. Number 5 is Intimidator at Carowinds. And I don't know about you, but I think the theming for this coaster is pretty cool. You know, it's themed after Dale Earnhardt, and there's a board of how many races he won, and there's a replica of his race car. And then there's also the hyper coaster in general, which is really fun, even though it also has a basic out and back layout. But the theming for this coaster really adds to the experience. Number 4 is Mako at SeaWorld Orlando. And this is my favorite B&M hyper coaster, and it is so re-rideable. It was so fun. Like, it's not that intense. It's just one of the coasters that is just pure fun. And it's also by the water, which makes it really pretty. And it's pretty cool how there's like sharks in the station, and it just looks super cool. And it's really easy to get good photos of this coaster since it's by the water. And oh my gosh, this is just so fun. And the last 3 on this list aren't actually B&Ms. Number 3 is Sky Rush at HersheyPark, also known as, you all know it, Thigh Crush. And I agree, it's pretty painful if you're not in the front row or on an edge seat. It's pretty painful for some reason. But if you want a good experience on this ride it in the front row, in the middle seat, so that way you can actually find the good in it, like the amazing airtime, the incredible speed, and the incredible intensity. It's just overall a fun coaster, if you ride it in the right seat, of course. Number 2 is Superman the Ride at Six Flags New England. It actually used to be called Superman Ride of Steel when it opened in 2000, and then it changed to Bizarro in 2009, and in 2016 it was changed to Superman the Ride. And it was voted the number 1 steel coaster in the world 5 times, and I couldn't understand why. It's incredibly intense, has some really good airtime, and it's just overall an amazing ride. And when I rode it, it was my number 1 favorite hyper, but that didn't last long at all. because a few days later, I went to Kennywood and rode my number one favorite hyper, and that is Phantom's Revenge. It used to be called the Steel Phantom when it opened in 1991, and it had foreign versions, but they got taken out because of the complaints of how rough they were. And it was made by Arrow, so that's how you know how rough it was. But then in 2000, Morgan rebuilt it, and it became Phantom's Revenge. So, first of all, how could you possibly get so much airtime on a coaster without falling out? Like, when I rode it, I for real thought we were gonna fly out of that, because your lap bar barely even goes down at all, so you're just flying in this thing. And here's the reaction of Mom and I after riding in the back row.
We just rode Phantom's Revenge in the back row! Oh my gosh! I've never gotten so much airtime on a roller coaster ever!
Out of your seat. I was out of my seat on the double down. I literally was like up. I was almost standing up. I thought I was gonna fall out of the train.
I was literally standing up. I ran at 5 plus.
Oh my gosh. It was awesome.
Times 10.
It was awesome. Oh my
rated?
gosh. 5 plus. It was incredible.
So it gets a 5 for the other rows and a 5 plus for the back row.
For the back, yes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
My
Back row's great.
gosh!
Man, I love that coaster. It's amazing. If you've never ridden Phantom's Revenge, book a trip to Pittsburgh and ride this beast. It is wild. So that's it for my top 10 favorite hypers. And you may know that we did a contest on Instagram and Facebook for people to guess my top 10 favorite hypers. And whoever won got a free t-shirt and 5 wristbands. And the winner is Andrew Gardner. So enjoy all these, man. Wear them all you want. So anyway, everyone, have a great day and be brave and ride on.